Welcome to Launch Today, the essential podcast for entrepreneurs looking to launch and scale their business to $1 million or more in annual revenue. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming Craig Burgess, a master of digital marketing and the creative director of Genius Division. With over 2 decades in marketing and web design experience, Craig has helped create iconic brands and websites that don't just look good, but also perform exceptionally well. Genius Division is your one-stop shop for professionalism, great marketing, and Yorkshire humor, which is a particular brand of humor. I guess it's like Vegemite. So if your marketing or website needs a revamp, Craig is here to show you how to turn things around. Craig, welcome to Launch Today.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Appreciate you taking some time. We know each other from Twitter. We've been back and forth following for 2 years, man. Not actively communicating every day, but because of the Yorkshire humor, I will see your tweets sometime and send a reply and be like, I have a broader sense of American humor. We prefer the slapstick to the dry comedy, but we make it work too.
Do you sometimes think I'm being serious when I'm actually joking? That's a particular brand of British humor that we're very good at. We're incredibly good at being both serious and unserious at the same time, and people not knowing the difference.
Yes, that is on the American side of things, that's a frequently misread bit of British humor. I also love the Ricky Gervais talked about in The Office. You're discussing the comedy behind it, right? In a American comedy, if you've got someone comedically berating an office worker and being the absolute prat, the American wants to be the one who's doing the berating, and the British comedian wants to be the one being yelled at. That's the difference between the two comedic styles in one simple format.
Yeah, because we always want to be an underdog as well. We're British, so we are permanently the underdog.
Yeah, you just used to control the majority of global trade. You were the underdogs, yes.
Yeah. That was a long time ago now.
That was a long time ago. That's true. The sun still never quite sets on the British Isles, though. Let me ask you, relevant to startups and launch in business, you've got a lot of experience in web design and branding, obviously 20 years, a long time. What do you see people do wrong in the beginning with their online presence?
Oof, it's a tough one. Can I say everything?
Yes, but not helpful. Let's narrow it down to a specific point. I'll give an example. I don't do visual branding because I'm a crap designer, but I do a lot of work on the positioning of getting your business answered correctly, right? Because what you say about your product completely changes the way it is perceived. Crowd Tamers, my agency, we run performance marketing ads principally to answer big questions around who wants to buy from the business and how do I attract them reliably. But we're not a performance marketing agency, right? We don't just run ads and say it's your problem if they don't work. And so finding the right language for Crowd Tamers to say, hey, we build go-to-market engines, and we do it repeatably. I built 70 of them, right? That becomes that's the positioning statement, as opposed to just saying, we buy ads, right? Which is very hard to compete with folks when you say we buy ads, because there's a million of those. There's very few folks who solve go-to-market the way we do. So that's on the positioning thing. I always tell founders, the narrower your niche, the better you'll penetrate. That's a specific thing as opposed to just like, you suck at positioning. So if you've got something on the design or visual branding side that you'd say, this is important to get right and many people don't.
It's not specifically about that, but I was actually having a conversation with a client earlier about this specific thing, about trying to do too much at once. I was meeting a potential client earlier, and they've done a very good job over the last couple of years of just doing search engine optimization and nothing else. So they've not gone away and they've thought, we need to start a LinkedIn brand, we need to become an influencer online, we need to do email marketing, we need to do everything, we need to do Facebook ads, Google ads. All they've done is they hired an SEO company and they've just ran with that for 2 years, and they've seen some benefit from it. They've got lots more inquiries, and their website is a bit rubbish. But the thing I said to them, you've done the right thing with the tools that you had available. You've spent time focusing on one marketing activity instead of, and this is the mistake that everybody makes, thinking that you need to do everything. So even if you even think what might be good for my business is to start tweeting, even when they think that, people think I need to make visual posts, I need to do video, I need to perhaps do some audio stuff, I need to do infographics. They still think they've got to do everything, even when they just do one platform. So I think it's somewhat of a cliche, focus on one thing, but it certainly rings true when it comes to marketing.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a good point. I do think there's a glut now, a plethora, an overabundance of, I've heard it called modern grotesque. It is the Google look, right? It's the material design, very flat, very clean, very simple. And one of the truisms of design is your customers spend 99.999% of the time on somebody else's website. So don't surprise them with the UI that doesn't make sense. But I do also feel we've all drifted towards simple sans serif fonts, white backgrounds, random blob shapes, and the same damn stock art. That's just, that's what we do, man. How do you tell somebody to, you don't have to go insane and go like crazy Rococo Goaty style, but how do you do something that's unique and not just more of that same damn thing?
Yeah, it's tough. I think the thing I always try to do, particularly when I'm doing a new brand or producing a design for a client or whatever, is you have to understand the personality that's underneath the thing. So you have to understand the business behind the thing that you're creating for them. So if you're creating a new brand, you have to understand, are these primarily a stiff upper lip type company? Are they serious? Are they professional, quote unquote, professional? Or are they funny? Or are they humorous? Do they not take themselves so seriously? Do they take their work seriously but not themselves seriously? So I think yes, absolutely, we can get into that conversation. Everything looks the same now, and that is certainly true. The deeper thing to understand behind this is that any of the visual work that you do has to reflect the company and the personality of the business that you're actually making it for. For example, if you were to make a new brand and you made it look fun, like the Google logo and multiple colors and all that kind of thing, but the company is not really that fun and they're a bit serious and they do, I don't know, medical supplies or something, is that really the right thing to be doing in that instance? So I think when somebody's looking to do any kind of design work or visual work, it has to represent the personality of the people behind it. A lot of people forget that because they do trend towards just making the new Google logo or using a sans serif. It's all a little bit too easy now. There's lots of templates out there. But the thing that I come back to time and time again, whether it's making design work or telling clients what to do for social, is you've got to get your personality across, because the personality is the only differentiator that you have in the market now. And that can mean actually the things that you're producing could look a little bit rubbish, but if your personality is coming across, that's got a much more value than it looking sparkly and clean.
Yeah. That is, who is it? Barry Hot, I think it is on Twitter. Talks about make ugly ads.
Yeah,
And there's two parts to this. One is it's just break out of the mindset of it has to be perfect before you get it out. And the other part is that if you're able to be authentic enough to make ugly ads, and some clients aren't, some companies aren't, right? If you're able to be that authentic, then you can also cut through. One of the best ad designs I had run in the last year was, and this, like, never do this, but it is what ended up working, was I had my browser open to the website of the client. I wrote a short message on a post-it note, stuck it to my screen, and then photographed it with my phone, this is the boomer way of taking a screenshot. And because the message was there, it looked real, and like when you hit on the homepage, of course, the visual brand aligned because it was the homepage was the ad. Like that went really well. But being able to have a brand that was willing to do that indicates a whole different type of company than your boring medical supply company or your giant corporate monolith. And that's, I think, part of why those things also cut through.
Yeah, the message has to align to the visual
Yeah.
ultimately. Whatever way you are looking to make something online, be it design or even writing a tweet, the message has to align to the company and the personality and everything else behind it. Um, it isn't as simple as just following a trend of what everybody else is doing. To your point about the lo-fi advert, there's a big trend at the minute of doing lo-fi video, particularly on TikTok. That every marketing opinion piece I read at the minute talks about how lo-fi video is doing better than highly produced video. And I think people are looking at this the wrong way when they're saying that lo-fi, and when lo-fi rubbish looking, basically somebody's filmed it on a potato or whatever. It's just amateur video footage, basically.
Right.
The reason that people say this is doing well is because it somehow doesn't look like an ad, or it doesn't look like it's been overly produced. Therefore, it must be a human, whatever that means. It must be a real person that's made it. And I think it's mixing the two things up. People say that lo-fi content is doing well, but I think it's just that's the thing that people have available to them. So more people are making it. It's easier. Not everybody has a professional camera. I don't think necessarily it's that lo-fi content is doing better or that somehow algorithms are pushing lo-fi content higher. I just think it's the thing that people have got available to them. And that's the danger of following trends, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you see what you think is a trend, but it isn't really the trend. It's just the thing that most people are doing. And then that ends up becoming the design style of what everybody does, but it isn't the thing that was the thing in the first place. And then all of a sudden, everybody's making things that look rubbish because, well, somebody said that on TikTok that kind of content trends better, but it wasn't the real reason in the first place.
Yeah, that is 100% good UGC, user-generated content,
Yeah.
that speaks with authenticity, performs well. But if you just take a bad piece of content and you film it like crap, it's not going to do better.
No. I'm actually trying to prove the opposite. I've recently started making videos online to market myself, and I'm trying to make them look better and be filmed better than everything else that I've seen, because I think that is a differentiator. When something is well produced, people notice that too. That cuts through in the same way. And if everything looks a bit rubbish at the minute, why wouldn't you try and do it the other way and hopefully see the opposite advantage? Because ultimately, we're all trying to claim somebody's attention, aren't we? We're trying to get eyeballs on the things that we're doing.
That's cool. Let me ask you, since we're off on this tangent, are there any websites, brands, whomever, that you look at and you go, they aren't the same damn corporate grotesque that everybody else is, and it also feels authentic with the brand? I can think of three, but I can only think of three.
So somebody just rebranded in the UK recently a huge organization called the RSPCA. You might be familiar with them. Most people have probably heard of
for
them.
Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Yeah,
That's the one. They do important work. And they used to be a little bit of a stuffy type looking company, their old charity logo.
That new website is a thing, man.
I can see the blue tint on your face.
Just boom, and hit me up there. Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's IKEA colors right there.
Yeah. I find this interesting. So that, to your point, is that things that I like are the things that are aligning with their brand. They used to look like a kind of a stuffy corporate company, and they've gone the entire opposite way now. Incredibly blue. I suggest you go look at it. Just look up RSPCA. You'll have an opinion on it. But I like the boldness of it. I like the fact that they are a charity. They have a meaningful message, and they're aligning the visual slightly, depending on your opinions on it, it's a polarizing look that they've got going on. And that's what I like people doing, actually having a statement and making a statement with what they're doing. That's one of the most recent examples I can think of off the top of my head. It only came out a few weeks ago, I think.
Gotcha. Three that I like a lot: 37 Signals, or Basecamp, I guess broadly. Like
Mm,
Basecamp is one of the OGs of productivity software. It is ancient, by which I mean like 12 years old. It's ancient, and it's always had an opinion on how it should look. And when you go look at it now, it's a little bit quaint, but it also carries it off with a certain "I've been around for a while, whippersnappers. Don't boss me around." I like Gumroad is just as pink as RSPCA is blue, and
yeah.
they use kind of surrealist advertising images. MailChimp does that too, but MailChimp, it always felt fake. With Gumroad, to me, I'm like, okay, this is you. And Lemon.io, which is a recruitment firm, I actually know Alexander from Lemon.io from Twitter, is such a strongly opinionated visual brand. And knowing the founder a bit and the team a bit, I'm like, it feels like this is a brand that is you. I'm not saying anybody who's listening should rip off Gumroad or Lemon or 37 Signals, but like, do think about the fact that all those brands, if you go to the website, or for that matter, the new RSPCA one, like, you'll remember it. It's not
Mm.
necessarily a bad thing.
I think the Basecamp one's a really interesting example because that is a perfect example of the particularly the founders' opinions. The founders are very opinionated, somehow visually representing their opinions as well. And a lot of it with the Basecamp stuff, but I really do the Basecamp website, actually, the marketing website. Um, a lot of the stuff on there is led by the words on the page,
Yep.
and the copy on the page is brilliant. And it's very simple visuals, but it's very confident. And I think that's the key with a lot of these things with RSPCA, Gumroad, RSPCA. I said the same one twice, but
Yeah, Gumroad, Basecamp, RSPCA, Lemon.io, any of these, right? They
yeah,
all, copy is a big part of also making the visual fit well.
and it's the confidence behind it too.
Yeah.
And I think it's a thing that you can't necessarily teach. It's not a theoretical point, but you just feel it almost. It's we look like this. We don't care. You're either going to like us or hate us, and we're going to go full all in. That it's not 80%; it's 100%.
Yeah.
And there's a power with that to convince people. And a lot of people, particularly in my experience, corporate companies, don't dare go that
Yes.
far.
Yes.
And that's why it sits somewhere in the middle. So you're thinking, is it this or is it that? It's just Magnolia wallpaper. I'm not particularly bothered. But with any of those ones, even if you don't like, I hate the Gumroad website as an example. In fact, I did a video on it years ago when it
Ah,
first
awesome. I'm
launched.
glad I could pull one out that you hated then, because I don't love it, but it is so distinctive that I've never forgotten it.
Exactly. That was the point I was going to make. It doesn't matter whether you hate it or like it, you remember it. And because it is done with such absolute confidence,
Yes.
you, even if you hate it, you can't deny that you like it because it's done with such confidence.
Yeah, they,
And
they did they committed to the bit all the way.
commit. Yeah, absolutely. Commit 100%. And you can't really go wrong regardless of the style that you've chosen.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Appreciate that. For the last 5 or 7 years, the trend has just been right. Sans serif, bland, boring. Is this changing, or are we're all stuck in this white photocopy hellscape of design by committee means everything looks like this?
Yeah. It's an interesting time, especially if you look at fashion as well. If you look at a lot of luxury fashion brands,
Beige.
they've all done the same too. They've all adopted the sans serif font.
Walked it back. Some of them, I think I saw,
Yeah,
was it Burberry or someone?
Burberry did.
And then
Yeah,
they walked it
Burberry.
back because people were like, "WTF is this crap?"
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's just a trend. These things are cyclical. The phrase means going around in circles. So they just go around in circles. So we'll see a move away from it again. One thing I always try to do, particularly as a visual person, as a designer, is to pay no attention to these trends. It's very easy to get obsessed with these trends, and then you make something that looks good of a time, but then in a few years' time, it doesn't look good anymore. It looks old-fashioned. It's a big part of the thing that you read out at the beginning about iconic. I strongly believe in producing iconic brands, as in producing an icon that lasts, and that isn't as easy as it sounds when trends are swimming around. And particularly if you're not a visual person anyway and you're starting a business and you need a visual, you need a logo or you need a brand of some kind, you need to do it. It's very easy to jump online and just go on Dribble or Google Images and just see what other people are doing. You can just Google it. You just Google 50 best brands and something will come up, 50 best brands of 2024. And they all look the same. The way that I've always tried to stay away from it is, one, not look at that stuff. So even for inspiration, I vehemently don't look at that stuff. And two, I look for inspiration elsewhere. So regardless of what I'm looking at, if I'm reading a book or I'm looking at a magazine or something, or I look older, so look 20, look 30, look 40 or 50 years back in time instead of looking at last week. We have this tendency as humans to the whole recency bias. We think the thing that's happening now is the most important thing. It's the way our brains are designed. And we have to fight against that. And I try and fight against that by looking at old things. And if it's 30 or 40 years old, that you're not getting stuck in the trends. And even some of the new things that are coming out now, they might even be trends from 40 years ago. At least if I'm not paying attention to those, it's going to be okay. Because I've seen it time and again. If you make a brand or a design that looks similar to something that's current now, it'll look terrible in 3 years' time. 4 or 5 years' time, it'll look old-fashioned. If you take in classical principles, classical design principles, which ultimately doesn't amount much more than keep it simple. If you do that, then you'll be okay in the long run. But to your point about the proliferation of serif fonts, it's ultimately a trend again, because it became unfashionable to have ornate logos or ornate typefaces, or particularly a lot of the reason I mentioned luxury fashion is because, like Burberry, a lot of them have got quite ornate symbols. Yeah. And they saw the kind of rush of online companies and thought that they were old-fashioned in some way. But why is old-fashioned a bad thing?
Doesn't have to be.
Why Coca-Cola don't change their logo every 5 minutes, do they? They've made tweaks to their logo.
Tiny ones. They've had the same bottle since, I think, 100 years ago now. They've had the same bottle shape.
Exactly. And I think the most stark example of these two is Coca-Cola versus Pepsi.
Yeah.
And Pepsi changed their logo every 5 minutes, and it shows a lack of confidence in what they're doing. And I don't know if it was the same over in your parts, but in the UK, they just did a launch campaign for the new logo, which is just the old logo. They've just changed all the...
Yeah, the one from the 80s. They relaunched it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they made a big deal out of it, and they said it was launched on March 20th or something like that. What does this mean? What are you saying to me? That you've made poor decisions for the last 40, 50 years? Is that what this is meant to say? The flip-flopping and the chip changing and all that kind of thing, I don't think it looks good. It looks like you're poor at making decisions. So I don't think if what you've got looks good, there's no danger. There's nothing wrong with sticking with something that works.
Yeah, but you've got all those designers who work at Pepsi. You have to justify their job, so they have to you got to shuffle the deck chairs around on the Titanic.
I agree. Cars are the perfect example, aren't they? The good old automobile, as you might say, around there. They change the design of cars constantly, and really nothing is changing. They are literally moving the parts around because they have to, like you said.
Somebody needs to get paid. Yeah.
Exactly. But we don't have to do the same thing when we are making a new brand for a new company, as an example. If you don't have to go down that same route.
You mentioned going back to the classics as a waiting inspiration. I would note here behind me, right? I'm not a lawyer. These aren't law books. What these are is Nat Geos from January 1949 all the way to December 2023. And so this is my inspiration library, right? I'll go in here and I have the articles, yes, but also, there you go. There's a random ad from, when is this? 1954, right?
Yes.
And a 2-page spread. And what are they actually? They're advertising fruit. Advertising fruit with "Do I have to grow old?" and my hand's covering it. But she's got a banana, right? It's the antioxidants. And they were like, we've discovered the existence of these. Let's tell you to eat more fruit because then you won't grow old. Or preposterous things like, here's an advertisement for, this is not actually an advertisement for a Studebaker. This is the advertisement for the company that produces the steel that goes into them.
I absolutely adore old adverts.
So here in 1954, there are maybe 200 people in North America who have the purchasing power to decide to buy enough steel where Bud Company wants to talk to them. They took out a full-page ad, back cover of the, what is this? The March 1954 issue. Full-page back cover to speak to 200 people. What are you doing? What are you doing? But also, look at the copy, right? Translating ideas into steel. That's actually real good copy for somebody who produces, rolls, manufactures, and like, yeah, you're solving a problem, right? What do I have? I want to make it durable. I don't want to find we're the world's leading steel producer. I don't care. I'll take your idea and make it steel. That's not a bad piece of copy, right? It gives you inspiration for a thing to go with from there.
Yes.
So that's my inspiration library. I've got all the issues from whatever 3 years ago down here. I don't look at these and go, oh man, the ad for, I don't know, 99 tips for less stress in retirement, meh, whatever, kiss off. I don't care about you.
Yes, it's rubbish. It's rubbish. It doesn't look classic anymore. There's a lack of soul or something with them. It's hard to pinpoint the intangible of exactly what makes them different. They look cheap in some way. They look rushed. You tell that the designer that was working on the other one, I suspect back then it would have been a designer and a copy team. So it probably they usually worked in pairs. There was usually a visual person and a word person, and that's why it came together so well, because it would have been two people sat in a room, probably smoking and drinking whiskey.
Don Draper, yeah.
Don Draper-esque, yes, coming up with ideas for it. And the other one now, it's not done that way anymore. It's passed off to a junior in a team, and they're working minimum wage, and they're not bothered. They don't have the experience of the people that were making the other ads, and it shows. It reminds me of George Lois. He's one of my favorite inspirations of anybody, really, because he was I like rebels. The old designers and copywriters and ad people, they were all rebels, weren't they? They weren't corporate people. To work in ads or to work as a designer back then, your Paul Rands, your George Alan Fletcher's, people like that, they were all rebels, and George Lois was one of the super rebels. And what was interesting about George Lois, he was an ad guy, but he was also a graphic designer. He designed logos, but did ads. And not only did he do print ads, he did video ads. He did everything, all kinds of different stuff. His book called Damn Good Advice is excellent. Really easy read. It's mostly visuals and a tiny bit of almost an aphorism on each page. One of the stories that always stick with me, I can't remember who he'd gone to visit, and I don't even know if the story's true, but it's the story that he tells. And I think it goes to show the lack of passion that is in a lot of this stuff these days. He was going to go pitch a new brand, a new logo idea that he had for a project to a big company in New York. So he rides the lift up to the elevator, rather, up to the 20th floor or something, gets out and goes into the meeting. And when he goes into the meeting, he's got the ideas on the boards and he's showing them, because they had them printed out on boards then. They never got emailed. That's why he was there to pitch it in person. And side note, I think you should always pitch your ideas in person where possible. And he was pitching this idea in person. And they said, George, we just don't like it. We don't think it's right. So George turned around and he opened up the window on the 20th floor and he sat on the window ledge as if he was going to jump. And he said, if you don't like the idea, I might as well just kill myself. And they were like, no, don't kill yourself. It's just an idea, man. And after trying to talk him down from the ledge, literally talk him down from the ledge, he ends up coming back inside and they agree to go with the idea. He obviously wasn't going to throw himself out of the window, but maybe. But it goes to show the passion that George had for an idea that he knew was right, but he knew the corporate people sat in the room were wrong, and he wasn't going to back down. And he was the same in his entire career. Honestly, I think that's lacking from a lot of, maybe not jumping out the window stuff, but the passion and desire and knowingness, the confidence thing again, to push your creative idea through, regardless of what your client says. Man, it's hard not to be inspired by that stuff.
That is true. I do feel like people who sit on window ledges and threaten to commit suicide if their ideas aren't adopted do, through Darwinism, self-select out of the gene pool. Because all it takes is one client being like, fine, jump. And I said I would. I guess goodbye, cruel world. I would note for folks who don't know George Lois, right, the iconic ad of his that I adore is Think Small for a Volkswagen Beetle.
Yes.
Which was full-page ad. And whenever anybody works with a client, I used to be a designer. I am not anymore. They always, can you just make everything bigger? They don't say everything at once, make it bigger, but they say, hey, can you make this bigger when you do it? And then they say, oh, this feels small, can you make it bigger? And before everything is squeezed into a page like this. And Think Small for Volkswagen Beetle was a complete subversion of what any brand would want, because the Beetle is like a 20th of the page. It's tiny. And then the copy at the bottom of the page is just, hey, Volkswagen Beetles are small, they're gas efficient, but they feel big on the inside and all this. And so the copy draws your eye. Sorry, the creator draws your eye because you open to a blank page with a tiny Volkswagen Beetle. You're like, what the heck is that? And that subverts any car ad today. They've got the grill there. And they're like, here, look at it. And that idea of, like you said, what if I go against the trend and make it where you turn the page and you go, oh, I didn't expect that. And that is a guy who had a vision and drove it and made it work. That can be really awe-inspiring to see someone do. But if you're listening to this, you aren't George Lois because he's dead. If you're trying to think of how do I take the ideas of something like a George Lois, take some of the stuff you've talked about, right? Go against the trend. Find inspiration in the things that used to be. As a founder or senior person growing a business, there's the trend, there's ways to go. How do you, just in your own brain, in your own self, come up with the creativity to do something different and the conviction to say, let's ride this one to hell or glory, boys? I'm asking you.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was a rhetorical question.
No, I want to get your advice here. The answer might be, I don't know, bro. That's fine, too.
It comes with experience. It certainly comes with experience. I remember 20 years ago being an afraid little designer who wouldn't dare say these things to a client, who wouldn't necessarily adopt the George Lois sitting on a window ledge type activity. It does definitely come with experience, but I do strongly believe that creative people and anybody who has to, even when people are setting up a business, not just creative people, anybody doing something, there has to be a contrarian, pirate, rebel attitude running through you somewhere, and you have to listen to that sometimes. And even way back in my first job, and I didn't know anything. It was my first job, and I was working at a design agency where they designed to a price list. A logo would cost £150 or something like that, and they were cheap. And because there was a price list, I had to stick to a time limit. So I got told, through sticking to a time limit, just do whatever you can. It doesn't have to be good. And I never stuck to that. I used to use every second of the time that I was given to make it as good as possible as that. But that didn't come from confidence because, as I said, I didn't have it when I first started. It came from that pirate rebel thing that I needed to go against the grain of something. I think if you're starting a business, you already have that inside you. You just sometimes, going back to the trends thing, you sometimes look around you and you get put off from following your gut instinct because you think nobody else is doing this, so I probably shouldn't do it that way. When the truth often is, maybe I should try it this way and see what happens, because what's the worst that can happen? Us as creatives, that's often what we're asking. Why not? Instead of, oh no, we can't do it. We're just asking it the other way around. Some people just get a bit too focused on the I can't do that instead of saying why not. And that's all I've ever done, really. And having the confidence to say it comes with time.
Gotcha. I did with a UX designer I'm working with a client. Um, say to them, and I am obviously maximalist in my general affect as opposed to minimalist. And I'm like, look, I want you to do a version of the design for this page, one of which is like the Johnny Ives version, as stripped down as you can. Push it as far that way. The other way is do a me version, right? Push it as far the other way as you can. Don't give me a middle ground piece of garbage because that's the uninspiring one, right? And then we'll test them because I'm super data driven, right? And so it is, does the minimalist or the maximalist version work better? We'll find out. But I think if you are a creative, the founder of Lotus, the car company, always talked about add lightness, right? Subtract everything you can so you can subtract no more. Or you take the Antonin Gaudi version and you do add everything you can until the structure doesn't quite crumble under its own weight. Pick one of those and go with it, push as far as you can. And then, to come back to my point of view of marketing, test it and see what works. And that's the last part, right? There's no real risk for most small founders in building something different and trying it. If you are led by the data of did it do its job, then you can try to make something unique and different and hopefully remarkable and beautiful. And also, fundamentally, we're all in the world of business that works and makes you money. If you can do all those things, that's the start for an iconic brand. Now, I have two questions I always like to end with. And the first one you've already gone into, right? You said Damn Good Advice for People Who Have Talent by George Lois. That was a book you're like, that's a good book. I like it. Is there another book, doesn't have to be a business book, that you think anybody, any founder, any builder, any person trying to start something new should look at to understand how to really approach this idea of how do I look and position and be distinct in a market where I guarantee you there is somebody else who offers the same service?
Can I be different and give you three?
Go.
Okay. So the one for marketing, the one that I really love, anything by Seth Godin, but particularly this one, is This Is Marketing. It's, I think, one of the best books in terms of easy to read, and I really love the way that Seth thinks about marketing in terms of founding a company. That's just the way you should market, basically, and ignore most of the other things. The other one that I think is a really good business book, which to some people is probably a bit cliche, but I think I'm surprised by the amount of people that don't know it, is Poor Charlie's Almanac, which is on my desk right here now.
Nice.
The reason I mention it right now as well is I've struggled to get a lovely version of this book for a very long time. Stripe
That looks
Press,
nice.
yeah, Stripe Press have now put out a version of this. It's lovely. It's a beautiful version of it. It's now available as a hardback in Kindle versions, every version basically. So it's finally been updated. Very easy to read, very beautiful to look at. I mean, I don't think there's anybody other than Charlie Munger who's worth. I'll say no more on that one. And then finally, the book that I just like flicking through now and again. I don't actually have it on my desk at the minute. It's at home. is The Art of Looking Sideways. Have you seen that book before?
I have not. There's a new one for me.
So The Art of Looking Sideways is the book by the other person I mentioned, Alan Fletcher. He was a graphic designer. And every single spread in the book is designed differently. So you can open up the book at any spread, and it is about a random topic of anything.
Whoa, I'm looking at the page here. This is wild.
Yeah, it's really wild. He was a designer, but he was just a crazy designer guy. He was just into everything. Most designers are like that. So the book is really a manifestation of his crazy curiosities in lots of different places. And it's just, it gets the creative juices flowing. And it does make you think a little bit differently every time you look at it in every which way. I don't think you can go far wrong with those three. It'd be a shame to just mention one, wouldn't it?
No, that's great. Three great recommendations. I have not read Damn Good Advice for People with Talent. I'd heard of it. I have read Charlie Munger's Poor Charlie's Almanac, and I haven't even heard of The Art of Looking Sideways. So those are awesome ones. Anybody who's looking at grappling with some of these creative topics, I recommend you give it a go. I also firmly believe if you're in the creative space, the only way to get good at being creative is to produce in tremendous volume. Right? You do something 10,000 times and maybe you'll start to be good at it. You've got to get in the reps. I also think it's important to switch things up and not only do your craft. What do? You put the reps in. That's not visual design for clients, but is something creative that you're using to use your brain in an interesting way where you put in the reps and you're developing a skill at it.
Oh, what haven't I done, I think is the question. Most years since I started my career, I have done a thing a day for 365 days. So the first thing I did was design an A4 poster every day. The second one I did was take a photo every day, and I corralled 20 other people to do it with me for a year. I think the third one was a record sleeve every day. And then one year I mixed it up and did writing. So I wrote something every day. I pick a random creative act, usually one thing that I've not done. When I never podcasted before, I picked podcasting every day for 365 days.
Well, what's the one you're doing this year?
The one that I'm loosely doing at the minute, I haven't formally done one every day for probably before COVID now, I think, 2 or 3 years. I found it a total drain on me, to be honest. Creatively, I was a sap for a year or two. But this year I'm doing videos. I'm not doing them quite every day. I do about 4, 5 a week or something like that. But video is the one for me now. It's not something I've ever particularly explored as a creative medium, but I'm loving it because I can see the similarities and the differences, and that's why I always pick something completely random. I did music for a little bit as well, music making. I was totally rubbish at that. I never made anything. But the two favorite ones I've done are podcasting and video. For the last 2 years, I've done an absolutely... Can I swear on this?
Sure, go nuts.
It's not even a bad swear word, but it's the only way I can describe this podcast. An absolutely batshit crazy podcast for 2 years called The Wednesday Audio, which is like nothing you've ever heard in your life. That was one of my main creative outlets that wasn't client work for quite a few years.
Now you've got to tell me, what's up with The Wednesday Audio? What do you do there?
It's difficult to describe. So the podcast started again as a daily challenge, well, as a weekly challenge, because it gets released on a Wednesday, hence the name.
Right.
And the original challenge was to talk about Wednesday every week for as long as possible, because I was challenged by a friend saying I didn't think you could make even 5 episodes talking about Wednesday. So I wanted to prove him wrong. And I think 117 episodes later, I have unsuccessfully managed to talk about Wednesday every week, but managed to produce a podcast on most Wednesdays.
Look, today's Wednesday. What's coming out today? As we record this, right? When we release this, it'll be a Friday. But today's a Wednesday. When we're recording this, what are you putting on today?
I'm taking a short hiatus from the Wednesday to do the video stuff. What it's turned into, the best way I can describe it is an absurdist British comedy podcast about a content creator that's trapped in a universe where he has to create a podcast every Wednesday. That's the only way I could probably describe it as.
Okay, interesting.
And it satirizes the whole inspiration influencer type thing. And I've got an old feature. Basically, I've got loads of radio features on there, and one of them is the banned words bin. And in the banned words bin, I put inspirational words like inspirational and motivational and compounding and all these kind of things. And I do. Just trying to see if I've got it here. Yeah, and when I say them, I say inspirational like that and pounding, and I bleep all the words out as I'm saying them. So then I have to remember whenever I'm saying them on the podcast from now on, I have to bleep the word out every time I say it. So there's a list of about 120 words that I can't say on the podcast that I have to try and remember as I'm actually recording the podcast.
Oh my goodness. So this is just you talking to a mic and losing your mind.
Yes, with lots of music and jingles and all kind. Honestly, like I said, it's batshit crazy. That's the only way I can describe it. Who is it? Is it John Cage, the guy who does the John Cage 4 minutes? I might have got that wrong. Where he makes a piece of music, but he just bangs loads of instruments on the stage for 4 minutes. It's very much in the inspiration of John Cage.
I think John Cage is the guy who does. Yes, it's 4 minutes and 33 seconds. For any combination of instruments.
Yes, it's very much like that. Yeah,
but it is also you don't play your instrument. It's 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence.
Yeah, I've got the wrong one, but he's got another thing where he just bangs instruments at basically, gotcha. But he does it on a stage.
So it's art then. I get it.
That's actually another joke that I make in there a lot as well. It's art, isn't it? And it's satire, isn't it? And I actually make a joke about it being satire and art. So it goes several levels deep.
Gotcha.
It's either a cup of tea or not, but that's the way it is. And the videos that I'm doing now are exactly the same. They're just satirizing marketing wankers, basically. That's my thing.
Excellent. All right. I appreciate your time today, Craig. It's been an interesting discussion that's wide-ranging around branding and being unique and taking references from back in the olden days, all these things. I appreciate you bringing some insight and sharing it with some people. If folks want to follow up, if they want to know more about you and about what you are doing at Genius Division, where do they find you online?
Just go to Twitter. That's the easiest place. Twitter.com/Craig Burgess, because I refuse to say X.com, even though it's simpler.
Yeah, but they still redirect.
Yeah. I'll use it till the last minute. I'm not switching to X.com until I absolutely have to.
You absolutely have to. I get it. They're going to start charging for X soon, according to Elon Musk. Will you pay if you have to?
I already pay for the premium blue tick.
Okay, then you're fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, Twitter, I don't make any money off of Twitter. I make money off LinkedIn. I make money off of YouTube. Those are my two channels that earn me profit. I post on Twitter irregularly because I've been there for forever, but I only have 4,000 followers or something. I'm not like a celebrity there.
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate that very much, your time today. Any last thoughts you want to use to tie the episode up with a bow?
No.
That works. That also works. All right.
Why do the same thing that everybody else always does? You know?
Why do the same? That's a very good question. So if you found Craig's advice helpful, or if you want to know, next week we have a buddy of mine, Talal Abshul, coming up he does vertical video ads, a bunch of advertising, and talk about how to use short form video to your benefit. If you found Craig useful, if you found me useful, if you want to learn more about Talal, next time I have the show come on, be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss any of these episodes. Thank you very much for your time today, Craig. I'll see you around.
Cheers, man. Thank you.